and looking at everything as it relates to the human development centers and the development of the disabled in the state. But specifically, this committee is looking at all the HDCs. And before I turn it over to my co-chairman for his remarks, I do want to just thank Sarah Murphy. I don't know where she's got off to. There she is. Sarah, thank you very much for putting this together and hosting us here at Conway Human Development Center and representing this community as well. We're very happy to have this center here and appreciate the nearly 1,200 employees and all that they do for the disabled that reside here, and obviously all the many family members that I see and supporters that are out there. We thank all of you for coming. We do not want us to be remiss in saying that Calvin, your predecessor here, Calvin Price, and you are both an example of the dedication, the long-term career decisions that so many people make into this space, and we do appreciate both of you and hope that you're enjoying retirement. While I'm thanking and recognizing people, I want to go to just thank the other colleagues that we have that are here, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, Senator Gary Stubblefield, Representative David Meeks, obviously, that represents this community. If I've missed any of you out there, we also have our colleague that is now at DHS, former chairman of Public Health in the House, and I know we're very fortunate to have your input and presence at DHS. And I'm going to keep going to say, because we have a full house, I've got a couple of special guests here. Former Senator Randy Laverty, who is no stranger actually at all to the disability issues. I know that he spent a great deal of his career in addition to his service in that space, and so it's glad to see you here, Randy. And another special guest that I have with me, and just happens to be here for this meeting, is Reverend Chris Essendo. And Reverend Chris has been my friend since 2004. He kept me alive, Randy. I was pretty sick the first time I met him in Ghana. But Reverend Chris has been here as a director for Global University with a meeting in Springfield, Missouri, staying at our home. And he's staying actually the first guest at our new guest home that we have for our nonprofit that deals with a lot of work overseas. And so we're very happy to have him here. And actually, talking about disability, they have no such entity in his nation. And so I told him that today actually probably would be very interesting. Many times, just to bring us all to reality about what we're dealing with in Ghana, many times you'll see the disabled begging on the street corners just to get bread to survive for the day. And it's a completely different atmosphere, so it really kind of helps us center ourselves on what we're doing here. And it tells me also that every single aspect of whether it's a community service or whether it's an institutional service, it's critical to be able to care for people in our society. And so actually, Chris, you being here prompted me to remember a lot of what we saw and you did with there. So it's glad to have you here with us today. And with that, I think that's the longest introduction I've ever done. But I do want to thank all of you for the time. It's very critical. We take it very serious what we're here to do today. And so with that, I want to turn it to Chairman Hammer for his comments.
Thank you, Senator Rick. We're glad to be here today among our friends, and we are here to take on a big challenge. It's an emotional issue, but it's a practical issue. And to be honest with you, just to make a commitment as far as my perception on the situation, we want to do what's best for the residents. And whatever that is, as it's driven and determined by the facts, that's what we'll make a commitment to do. We have a long list of items that we have to get through, and I think probably the next 2 or 3 months to bring back a report by the end of the year. It's going to be a pretty aggressive agenda. We'd like to get around and tour the other facilities as well, so we go holistic in our approach and not just focus on one aspect of it. But I can promise you, on the basis of Senator Reckert, myself, and the other members sitting around this committee, we will take the facts and we will make the best decision, because we're going to be driven by what's best for the kids, what's best for the adults that we are charged with the responsibility to take care of. You know, that commitment. We'll let the end result be what the end result is, driven by that motive. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Look forward to the meeting and what we're going to find out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, just looking here, as you know, this is a subcommittee of the Healthcare Task Force, and I want you also to know that the other members have other obligations. And so I believe Representative Ferguson's out of state at another AMA meeting that was pre-scheduled. And so I wanted you to make sure and understand that their absence isn't just because they didn't make the trip. Senator Dismayne, as pro tem, is pulled in so many different ways, and that's why I'm very happy to have some other members here to make sure that if there's a question we fail to ask, that you'll be here, and want you to participate fully today, members. One thing that we did want to do, it was just a matter of looking at the schedule. Obviously, you see on the agenda, the first thing is a tour. Well, many of you have family members that are here, etc., and we decided to move the tour to the end of the meeting so that now that we're here convened, everybody's settled, we wanted to go ahead and let you get right into your comments and things and hear the reports. And so we didn't want to make that announcement. Obviously, if you're here and you did want to join that tour, I see one of our friends from the media that's here. Be glad for you to join us in that tour as well. Also thanks to Phil and all of our staff for everything you've done, and we're going to get into the meeting. And up first then, since we've moved item C to the bottom, is Melissa Stone, as the Director of the Division of Developmental Disabilities. And Director Stone, you're recognized. And as is our custom, if you wouldn't mind to state your name and who you represent for the record, and then you're recognized for your remarks.
Director of the Division of Developmental Disability Services.
Sure.
Sit down.
You gotta get ready for the voice.
You don't want me anywhere near the voice. Thanks so much for having me speak today, and we are just honored that you're on our campus. We're excited that you guys are going to get to tour and see the wonderful work that we do here at the Conway Human Development Center. Most of the board members are here, and I would like them to stand so that you guys can put a face with a name on the board members. Of course, you've already met our board president, Randy Laverty. Okay. And then we also have, let me see who's back in the back. We have Artie Jones. We have Suzanne Montgomery. Do we have, let me see. Oh, thank you, Daryl. We have Mr. Daryl Pitney. We have David Rosengrant. And we are missing today Dr. Linda Selman and Sally Harden. But those are our board. We meet on a regular basis. We've been touring the centers as well. We hope that you guys can see all the centers. We had our last board meeting on the Boonville campus. We found that it's been beneficial for our board members to visit those on a regular basis, so they see the comings and goings on our center grounds. So just want to encourage you guys to do that. When I spoke with Phil about kind of what you guys wanted me to talk about, I'm mostly here to answer questions, but just wanted to do a brief recap. I know the last time we met, I gave an overview of each center and kind of the distinctions and the individual services that were offered at each center. Since we're at Conway, I'd like to focus on Conway a little bit today. Conway is our largest center, the only center that has an infirmary, so we take very medically fragile residents at this center. It's also our only center that takes children. We are a fully functional school. Sarah Murphy is our superintendent. So the kids who live here attend school on our grounds. Conway has about 468 residents as of today. It is run like 5 centers. They're broken up into teams. Each of our other centers at Boonville, Warren, Arkadelphia, and Jonesboro are smaller centers that have around 90 to 100 people. So Conway is a well-oiled machine. I'm glad you guys are here. Calvin Price was here for a long time, did a great job, mentored Miss Murphy, and she has just hit the ground running. And we're really proud of the great work that she's doing here. As you guys know, we've been meeting frequently with this Stephen group and attending all the legislative meetings. And so we're very aware that there's a need for savings across the DD population. DDS is the largest division within the Department of Human Services. We have about 2,500 employees. 2,000 of those employees work at our human development centers. We are mindful of the savings that we need to incur at the governor's request. We're looking at 3 buckets of savings. We're looking at saving money from our waiver clients, from our clinic-based services, and from our human development centers. We have already begun implementation of some of those, and Director Gillespie's, she's kind of hit the ground running as well. She's already identified the need to restructure, and a lot of that restructuring will affect our centers. The restructuring with the chief of procurement will directly affect how the centers procure contracts. It'll be a different setup. Right now, each center kind of has free will of setting up contracts. We believe that if we did some bulk contracting, that we'll get bigger bang for our buck across all 5 centers, and that's something that we've been looking at for several months now. The other restructuring piece would be the chief of human resources that she discussed, the task force. That's going to have a huge impact on our centers. Part of our cost-saving plan would be to reduce the turnover rate. As you guys know, that much turnover, which we're DDS direct care workers at the human development centers and DCFS caseworkers are those 2 high buckets of turnover. So if we can get someone in that will help us address and decline that turnover rate, we will see some savings. And I think you guys were distributed, we emailed out last time at y'all's request some turnover data. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about that. And lastly, on the restructuring initiative within DHS, the chief of financial officer, which is going to be Mark Story, we are changing how the budgets will be run. So right now, I have a chief financial officer up at central office, and then each of the 5 centers has their own financial officer that does a variety of tasks, including budget. That restructuring will be different. So what we're trying to do, and we've been trying to do this for since I came on board, is trying to see that big picture of how not only the centers fit into the DDS budget, because we have a fairly large budget, but also how the DDS budget fits into the DHS budget. So I'm excited about probably more about any of the restructuring of the budget piece of it, because I think that's going to really help us see how we all fit together. So those 3 legs of restructuring, I think, will bring about some great change with more efficient measures at each one of the 5 centers. We also have been really looking at not only staffing turnover, but just sheer number of staff. So I think I've mentioned this to you guys in the past. Every single staffing request comes through my desk. So as you can imagine, with 2,500 employees, I get a lot of emails when we're trying to refill positions. And Forrest Steele is here today. Forrest, do you want to stand up? Forrest has worked for us for how many years?
About
32 years, and he has been the superintendent out at the Jonesboro Development Center. When I was made permanent, I said I've got to get Forrest up to the central office to help me. So Forrest has come on board, and he is overseeing all of the centers, and he's doing a real fantastic job. So we've been looking at a lot of these issues, and you might have to come up here and answer questions in a minute. But but we've been really looking at ways to just get by with bare minimum staffing, but without putting residents at risk of harm. So we have kind of a plan in place of when and how those positions are being approved as they're coming across my desk. Of course, we're regulated by CMS, Office of Long-Term Care. We have an outside agency called CARF that also accredits us, and we are confined to certain staffing ratios based on individual needs. So we have a lot of clients on one-on-one supervision. And so there's just a point there where you can't kind of cut any further, but we're trying to make sure that we're getting by with the least amount of staff possible. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the efforts we're doing to be more representative.
There's no way we're gonna let a legislator sit there.
I'm the lawyer one anyway.
Not one that has as good a question as Representative House, who obviously represents the area. And I don't know if you come all the way to CHDC, but you're pretty near, and obviously have people. So go ahead and listen. Thank you.
So I'm happy at the end of this, or right now, to answer any questions about those cost-saving measures. But those are three things that we've been putting into place for a couple of months now. We, as you guys know, have been looking at an independent assessment for various populations within DDS, particularly the waiver, but we also think it'd be beneficial to do an independent assessment on those individuals entering a human development center. As you guys probably already know, the eligibility criteria for both our waiver and for the human development center is the same. So once you meet that eligibility criteria, you have a choice of whether or not you'd like to live at a center or whether or not you'd like to go out on waiver. Because that eligibility criteria is the same, and because we want to use it on the waiver clients, we think it'd be beneficial to ensure that those at the highest level of need are the only ones entering the doors at our human development center. We already have procedures in place. We have a team that analyzes the appropriateness before they even are reviewed at each of the centers. But we think it might be even more beneficial to go ahead and have those clients undergo the same independent assessment and make sure that they're fitting into that third highest need tier prior to admission. Now, of course, there have to be a few stipulations on that, because we do get calls in the middle of the night from Adult Protective Service, from Division of Children and Family, and we do get some pretty crisis-related immediate requests from family and waiver providers that they need immediate help. So it wouldn't be kind of a one-size-fits-all, but just for the people that are wanting to get into the center who are not in that immediate crisis, we would like them to undergo an independent assessment. I'll stop right there and see if you have any questions about any of that. That was a lot.
Actually, do have one question already. Mr. Chairman, would you like to go ahead? Okay. Representative Meeks, you're recognized, sir.
Just making sure that the microphone's on. Thank you. My question is around the turnover ratio. What are the reasons given as to why that an employee does not stay in our human development centers?
So as you can imagine, a lot of it's pay. I mean, that's one of the big reasons. The other is this is a hard job. We're talking about that direct care employee, which is the same direct care employee that a waiver provider, such as, ICM is here. So the same kind of employee that you'd be hiring for waivers, a minimum wage employee. You come to work for us, and we go over a client's behavior plans with you, and you have a risk of being put on a maltreatment registry, or you can go work at McDonald's and make minimum wage, and you don't have those risks associated with it. You know, we are looking at ways to retain staff in that first year. What we have found based on the data is that if we can get you for that first year, there's a good chance that you'll see kind of the long-term plan and the benefits of working for the state. But we have to come up with a way of incrementally increasing your salary based on merit over that first year, because people don't like that. They just feel, I think, stagnant, and they just don't see the end to it. So people aren't looking at it as a career path. You know, Miss Murphy's a good example of this, and she can speak to this, but she started here as
direct care when I was 21.
as a direct care worker, and has worked here that entire time up to superintendent. You know, that is a career path here. It's just that people today don't honestly see that when they start, and they're looking for more money up front, and they're not really lured in by the benefits of working for state government and the great insurance and and the state retirement. That's just not appealing as much to this new generation. We're also looking at changing and kind of coming into the wave of the future in terms of how we're doing trainings and how we're doing things to cater to that younger generation that likes being taught things online. We're just we're kind of been old school for a while, and we're trying to catch up and get in tune with how other people are doing it in the private sector, so that we can attract more workers.
So as a follow-up question to that, if I may, Mr. Chair, basically when you hire somebody, that direct care worker, that's it. That's basically their title. You don't have like and again, I'm probably comparing it to DCFS with caseworker. You just have a caseworker position. You don't have a caseworker 1, a caseworker 2, and a caseworker 3, that where they might start off with some responsibilities, and then as they do more training or as they take on more responsibilities, they can go into like a direct care worker 2 position and a direct care worker 3. And then, you know, so that again, that gives you maybe more time for them until other positions, or maybe where they can get the experience that they need to be able to have the requirements to go into these other positions. So from what I'm hearing, you just have like a direct care worker 1, and then that's it, and they would stay in that for as long as, I guess, as they're here until they're able to get another position somewhere.
No, and Sarah, pull your chair up here, because we have a tiered system.
Oh, you do, okay.
We do.
Yeah.
And Sarah employs the most people and has the most turnover. So let's let her talk about it. Let her talk about
Sarah,
it.
if you would just state your name
Sure.
and your position.
Sarah Murphy, Superintendent at the Conway Human Development Center. And we do have the initial position of a residential care assistant. That's what you start at.
That's a
RCA.
minimum wage position pretty much?
It's 906.
Okay, so just above it,
906
okay.
an hour is what an RCA starts at. Then if they work 6 months and they complete it's called phase 2 training, which means that they're learning a little bit more and they hadn't had any discipline, then they promote to what's called a residential care technician, an RCT. And they get, that promotes them up to $9.99, I believe. So they get a little bit increase with that. Then, at any time after that, they could apply for a residential care shift supervisor. That is kind of that next level up. We used to call it an A2. It's the assistant to the supervisor in the house. There's also then a residential care supervisor position that they could promote to. All of those incremental positions would be a 10% increase if you did the path from the bottom to the top. Now, like with me, for instance, I kind of skipped some levels, and so I didn't get the most bang for the buck if I would have done all the little incremental system. But there is a path, but what we're seeing is a lot of people, some of those higher level positions, it may be that people stay in those, and that RCA and that RCT has a constant turnover. It's getting kind of like what Melissa said, getting people past that 6 months point, coming into a hard job that we try to train them for. We try to show them how difficult it's going to be, and encourage them that if once you get in and you get familiar, that it is a joy. But a lot of them we just lose fast. And then of course we lose many to a failed drug test or a failed background check that will kind of, we will interview, they will apply, we will interview, we will start to invest in them, and something will come back along the way. And so, and it's before they get out of training, they're not working with residents with that coming back. But we do lose several to those regulatory have-tos that we have to stick by.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hammer, Chairman Hammer.
Thank you, Senator. One of the, we have a committee that's kind of started looking at the turnover rate, because it's not only problematic here at this institution, it's problematic at institutions across the state that are run by the state, such as the Arkansas Health Service Center and others, DCFS and all the other ones. What happens here, though, does have some impact on those others, in that if you hire LPN, because I noticed you had signs up for hiring LPNs, you are competing against the private market as far as being competitive with them. It's not just the low pay as much as it is the lack of competitive pay with private institutions. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and I would say that it's not just for LPNs, but across all levels here.
Okay. And one of the things we're kind of finding in a pattern in another state agency is, and we've had this statement actually made by employees, it's not that the pay is the issue, it's that the management is the issue. So I was wondering, as the superintendent, if you could speak about the longevity of your management teams and how long they have been in place, and what kind of working relationship you have between management and those that they're over.
Conway may be unique in that, because our department heads, we probably have about 40 department heads, because we have, about 1,200 employees, so we have a lot of levels. Our department heads, I can only think of a couple that have been here less than 10 years. We have the longest working state employee works here. He's worked here 55 years. We've got the second longest one that's worked here 50 years. She works here. So we may be a little bit unique in that. We have a lot of long-term department heads. Calvin, who retired, he'd been here 36 years, I believe, at his retirement. That's actually kind of the norm for department head level positions here. Now, the lower, as you go down to the other lower levels, is where you'll see the turnover.
A couple other questions, Mr. Chair. Is part of what you're dealing with is just the culture of the current generation that find it too easy to quit and go get something else, or just keep flipping over? And would you care to elaborate on that?
It's difficult. I'm not sure. There's some of that. There's some people that just have difficulty staying at a job, and that, we are in a community with 3 colleges, so we have people that don't ever plan on staying very long. They're just kind of at an in-between stage in their life. Now, what we try to do, what we hope to do, is we work with our universities, and we have a lot of internships. We try to get people and get them kind of connected in, so that that they won't only work here as direct care or whatever, but then when they graduate to whatever specialty, that they'll come here and do it. So we try to use those resources to get them connected, but it seems to be, I would say, probably a lot of the exit surveys say money, but I would say it's just as much how challenging the work is, because I've done it, and it is very, very hard work. And it is hard to work at a job where you may get slapped in the face. I've had that happen, and a lot of our staff have. And you have to have a heart for people to be able to do the things that you have to do in that position and come back the next day.
Okay. And Melissa, to the assessment tool you referenced a while ago, so you do believe then, what I hear you saying, that the assessment tool has a viable place in assessing the needs of this population and other populations that are under the DD wash. So is that the position you take then, that the assessment tool does have its place to be used?
I believe so.
Okay. And would using an assessment tool, and I'm seeking information so nobody think I'm trying to get a gotcha moment, but in using that assessment tool, that would be administered by a third-party individual or company, and would that then remove, but how would that change from what you're currently doing in assessing whether somebody meets the criteria to be here?
So once you meet that eligibility criteria, the institutional level of care criteria, part of what we do internally at this point is we have a team that says, has this person tried to be out on labor? Has it worked? is the need to the extent that they need 24-hour care at a human development center. So there is a culling out factor that's happening within DDS at this point in time. But sometimes parents or guardians just feel more comfortable with the center than with waiver. And I'll tell you, part of the problem is that right now, the waiver wait list has 3,000 people waiting on it. So if you establish that eligibility criteria, and you want to go on waiver, I put you on a wait list, and you're number 3001. And if you need immediate help, you're coming to a center. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors playing into what's going on right now within the DDS world, and they all fit together, and we're trying to do pieces in each bucket to make it flow better and to make each placement the most appropriate placement.
Okay, last question, Mr. Chair, for now, is, so who handles the assessment of the residents now? Is it a state employee of the Human Development Center that actually goes out and does that, or is that contracted out now, and who administers the assessment to make that determination?
So I think what you're referring to is the initial eligibility determination. So that is not recommended at this point changing. What you do is you come to us and you say, hey, I need services, or my loved one needs services, and we say, okay, fill out this packet of information, and there's some required testing that has to be submitted with it, and then we have a team of psychologists that are actually housed in Jonesboro, not at the Human Development Center, but in a county office in Jonesboro, that makes a determination if someone's eligible for a Human Development Center or the waiver, that they meet that institutional level of care. Then we have another unit in Jonesboro that's in the county office that determines Medicaid eligibility, income eligibility. So once those two are met, then if you want to go into a Human Development Center, we have a staff within DDS that determines whether or not you should even kind of be funneled towards the centers. Your packet, if you're deemed to be appropriate for a center, is uploaded into a system that can be seen by each of the 5 Human Development Centers. They each have a clinical team that sits down every Tuesday and looks at the packets that have been submitted to determine if that person's eligible. Because even if that person would be perfect at a Human Development Center, it really depends on who you're caring for at the time and where you have a bed open. Because a lot of it is, can that person be compatible with who we're already caring for? So when you hear us say there's a wait list at the centers, it's not a priority wait list. We're going through people's names and looking at their packets and determining who's appropriate at that time to live with the people who are already there. Does that help?
Senator Linda Collins-Smith.
One of the questions, when you mentioned risk registry in the beginning as one of the issues that you have to deal with, and it's a very serious issue when you have to explain what could, their lives, your lives can change, their lives can change. One of the things that, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
When you talk about risk registry, you're talking to an employee or a potential employee about how their future careers could be affected, their lives, by going on a registry, abuse registry or whatever. We've also talked about that a little bit in joint peer review, dealing with abuse registry with children in the home or something. You find yourself being guilty before innocent sometimes, and that is a horrible place to be. And it's a horrible thing. And so I guess what I want to ask you is, for us, Representative Hammer, on this issue, to follow up with some of the things we're working on already, is that a federal or a state issue that you're dealing with, number one? And for someone who was really innocent, how can they get off of this particular, for your type of work, so that we can know if it's something that we could change policy or laws in Arkansas? So if you'll explain that, because we want to be able to allow people to go to work and not want to turn around and leave before they get started. So, because it is a real serious issue.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk a little bit about that for now.
Okay, I'm gonna start and I'm gonna let you give an example. You just need to stay up here. So yes, it's a state and a federal requirement. And no, unlike the child abuse registry, there's no mechanism, like they have the board where you can petition to have your name removed, after the fact. So it's operated a little bit differently. So it's housed under the Office of Long-Term Care. It is it's the same list. It's also kept by Adult Protective Services. So it's the other side of the coin from the child abuse registry. It's if you have abused an adult. I will tell you that and this is where I want Sarah to jump in, we have staff at every center who work on behalf of that regulatory agency and does investigations of abuse. So we do a very thorough job, and I feel like, and I also would like y'all to know that we do have cameras in all of our centers except for the Boonville Human Development Center, and I'm given the footage get notified of every single incident, but we're also given video footage of I would say 95% of the incidents, because we don't have cameras in the restrooms or the bedroom area, but most incidents happen within that common area. So it is scary to people, but I don't want to portray that we're unnecessarily or over-eagerly putting people on a registry. I feel like when they're put on there, there's valid reason that they're placed on there, and of course they have the right to appeal with the Office of Long-Term Care. If the Office of Long-Term Care watches the footage or looks at our investigation and doesn't feel like that it was appropriate, they can dismiss it right then. So there is a process at that point, similar to the child abuse registry. The difference is with the child abuse registry, they have that, I was actually a board member for a period of time, where you have an independent board that people can petition to, depending upon what the allegation was and how many years have passed and what kind of treatment that you've undergone, to ask that board to remove your name. And there's no such mechanism at this point for adults. So once you go through that process of having your long-term care hearing, that determination is that determination. Did I misstate any of that?
No, that's correct. And just because there's an allegation against someone doesn't mean that their name goes on the registry. You know, what happens is an allegation may be made against someone. What we'll do is we'll immediately protect the resident that is the supposed victim. We put that staff member that it's been alleged is the perpetrator on leave, paid leave, and they will stay on paid leave until the investigation is complete. We have 5 working days to get it complete, so it's not like it drags on. If we have to do past 5 days, we have to get an extension from the Office of Long-Term Care. Like Melissa said, the Office of Long-Term Care regulates all of that. At the end of that, we do have our investigator, and ours here is an attorney. The DDS chief investigator is housed here at Conway. He does those for us. And what he'll do is he'll do the investigation, he'll give us all the facts, all the determinations, and then he gives it to us and we make the decision to substantiate or not, based on, is there enough evidence, is it more likely than not that this occurred. If we substantiate, then it goes to the Office of Long-Term Care. They can substantiate it or not. If they don't, the person never goes on the registry. So they're doing a second look. I wouldn't necessarily call it a second investigation, but they're looking at our investigation and they're making sure that they feel that it deserves the same outcome. If they unsubstantiate it, then the person has the right to go through the appeal process to get their job back with us. And there's hearings held and we go through that. If they substantiate it, then there's an appeal path to appeal that. But if they lose that, then they go on the registry, and we are not allowed under regulation to have anyone working with residents that is on the maltreatment registry.
Members, any other questions? Senator Stubblefield, if you would give him a mic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have just a brief question. The, the institutionalized eligibility criteria that they have to meet, has that changed any in the last 10 years? Or has there been an attempt to change any of that criteria that they have to meet to be institutionalized?
No, not to my knowledge, and I'd hate to speculate on that, because I haven't been at DDS, for 10 years, but no, I don't believe so. I mean, that institutional level of care is set by every state. So in Arkansas, we set it actually back when Conway was started, because Conway was our very first human development center. And so that was the eligibility criteria to get into a center. And so you have to have one of those categorically qualifying diagnoses, autism, seizure disorder, intellectual disability, et cetera. And you have to show that the categorically qualifying diagnosis has caused some sort of deficit, adaptive functioning deficit. So that paired together is the criteria. And then when CMS allows states to apply for waivers, we were required at that point to mimic the criteria for the waiver, because the purpose of the waiver was to give people an alternative to institutional care. So we're required to use the same eligibility criteria for both.
So that initially that criteria was set here. Was it adopted then by the other centers of all of the state?
The federal government actually set the criteria, and you can change it somewhat. I mean, well, for example, we had as the DMS changes over, as the diagnosis change over time, there are tweaks to it, but the major set criteria has been the same.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Talking about the waiver list, and we are approaching about 10 till 2, just to remind everybody here, we've got the Stephen report to come up, and then we have a tremendous amount of people that want to speak to this issue, or parents or representatives. So, and I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time to make sure everyone hears them. But on the waiver list, I actually, personally, and I think some of the others here, I don't speak for them, but I've stated that this is something that we should attack on both ends of the spectrum. I feel like, frankly, that the amount of money, I may get in trouble over this, but I will tell you that the amount of money, I think, to taking care of the entire waiting list was how much? I'll ask you that.
If we put him on the current waiver with the average of 52,000, it would be right under 200 million.
200 million if you took away the entirety of the waiting list? Well, that was definitely a bigger number than I was remember we were talking about. But yes, I think it added a zero in there somewhere.
If we put him on the current waiver that we offer.
That's federal and state money, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and that's the total.
I'm thinking okay, let's talk about the state money.
Okay,
What was the cost to the state?
I'm terrible, I'm a lawyer, I cannot do math, but it's a 75-25 match.
Okay, because I was down there in the single digit millions, is where I was at.
It all would be about 40 million.
Yeah, I was even thinking lower than that, so I must have dreamt a little bit about it. But the thing is that that's something that I know that there was some comments made about trying to reduce the waiting list. And so I think there was general consensus that that's something we'd love to be able to do
Yes.
at the same time. And so I want to make sure to state that I still believe that. However, I was not ready for 200 million, which you just stated. So hopefully we can go back and do some more numbers on it. But is there anything else that we haven't asked you today, Director Stone, about this issue that you want to make sure to bring before the body before we move forward?
No, you're going to hear from a lot of passionate people later today, but I just would like to say we're very proud of our centers. We definitely feel like that there's a need for centers on the continuum of care, and we're just happy that you guys are looking into the issue and are interested in helping us come up with solutions. So we're honored y'all here.
I guess I will say, because everybody that has been around this issue knows that I want to compliment not only the department, but actually definitely Conway Human Development Center, who went through what I would say is the gauntlet with the federal lawsuit that was brought against the center. And you passed that test. You actually were successful. And that's something that's very important for everyone in the state of Arkansas on this issue to realize, is that there was a specific intent to come to, and might as well say, to shutter this facility and those like it. And your center was able to withstand that test and was able to prove that you do take care of people in these centers. And I think that is exceptional because that probably has not always been the case around the country when those suits were brought. So we commend you for what you do. And that's one of the things that I'll say as we get ready to move forward, is that whether it has been the community health providers, the community disability providers, some of which are here, or whether it's been all of you, I found that many of you have a calling to this arena. That when I've talked with you, it's very apparent to me that you want to help and you feel a calling to help this segment of our society, and so you are to be commended for that. So thank you very much for presenting. Unless there's no, I do have, it looks like one follow-up here, Chairman Hammond.
Melissa, when the reorganization came out by Director Gillespie, did that restructuring by any chance give you any avenues to find different funding sources that previously, because of the old structure, may have prohibited you from going after those funds? Was there anything that was created through the restructuring?
I do think that because we're just right now, as you guys know, kind of starting to kind of do that physical restructuring within the office, I do think we're going to find different and unique ways to fund projects because we've just been looking at DDS, and it's going to have a much broader perspective of the DHS budget. An example of that is you guys probably have met Misha Martin. She's the interim director of DCFS. Misha actually was the assistant director for DDS for a couple of months. I stole her when I was needing some help, and before she went over to DCFS. And because of that relationship, we are actually working together on a problem that we're having right now with children in foster care who are also DDS clients, and trying to come up with a plan. And it's just, I think that's the big plus of the restructuring, is that many directors were already doing that, working with other directors to come up with innovative ideas to work together. But once you kind of have the budget laid out in a way that's more fluid, I think it's going to allow more flexibility in coming together with different divisions to combine efforts to make things work. So I'm excited about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sarah, is there anything you wish to add? Because we had you on the agenda, you know, as we got ready for the tour. Is there anything you want to add just on the topic before we move forward?
Well, only to say that we do fully support Continuum. We know that we're not an island, we're a piece of the whole Continuum, and that's what we would like to just remain a part of that. We work with community providers very well. We have a lot of efforts that we do together, like our Florenza Estate apartments that are on our property that Independent Living Services got together with us and they built, and some of our residents have been able to transition to. We have a lot of cooperative projects like that with the community providers, and we feel like we are just a part of that continuum. We don't think it's a us or them. We don't want it to be that way. The people, citizens in the state of Arkansas that are in this population, they need us all to be available for when they need that level of service, whatever it might be.
You have one follow-up, and I think from Representative House.
That will be brief. The reimbursement rate on the waiver side is 75-25. What is it with the HDCs?
It's just 25-75. It's
You're
the
on the
same.
same rate?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So it's the same.
Thank you.
Senator Stubbsfield.
I just have one brief comment. You know what troubles me is whenever there's allegations made against these centers, and a lot of times by groups that we don't agree with, even though those allegations are proved wrong, those go out to the media and they leave a bad perception with the public. I just wish there was some way that we could prevent these, because sometimes I wonder if there's not an agenda Because just by starting these allegations, they go to the media, and the media picks up, people read it in the paper, and pretty soon you get, you know, these people are abusing people, and it's really not the case at all. So I wish there was some way we could look into this to prevent some of that.
I think that would maybe be taken up by the Judiciary Committee. If there were some consequences to frivolous lawsuits, frivolous complaints, it would probably not only help that, but help in a lot of arenas in our judicial system. So I agree with you, and since I'm speaking, I think you're about to get an answer. But I will tell you that I personally contacted our federal officials in the past regarding federal funding that is given to some of those third-party entities. And when I looked at some of their budgets and what that federal money paid for, 90% of the staff in those entities were lawyers that were tasked simply finding opportunities to sue. That's a problem. And I also asked at the same time, when I looked at that funding, I wanted them to consider the fact that in the case of Conway Human Development Center, we were twice victims as taxpayers. We had taxpayer money squandered in bringing the suit and the cost and the time of prosecuting the suit, and then state taxpayers paid over $1 million out from this center. And one of the sad things, and one of the people that told me this may be in the room, but many families, individual families that had members that were served in these centers, gave bequests and gifts to the department, DDS, or to the centers. And I believe that in some cases with that situation nearly wiped out the total sum of what people gave over and above their taxes or any requirements. They just gave out of their own family and their pockets. It was wiped out with the costs. And for that, I think right now, I still think that the federal government should have to reimburse the state of Arkansas for all those costs. And so I've heard stated that I think Senator Bozeman spoke to some of you about attending this, is what I've been told here today. And he is well aware of these issues, and I think very supportive. And I would want people to ask him on his position. But I think that even our federal delegation is well aware that there has been an agenda from some parties. But I also want to say, to be fair, there are some entities that have the same calling to make sure that people are cared for properly. And I do not want to leave an impression that every advocacy group is a group that is actually set out to just cause trouble in this arena and prey on the taxpayers. So I want to make sure to clear that up, especially since there's media in the room. And I think you have a comment.
I just have a quick comment. So I'm just going to comment on things that we can control in terms of publicity and media. So what we're trying to do at DHS as a whole, and specifically within DDS, is we've set up an office that's community outreach, nonprofit support, communication. We do some really good work at the centers and with clients on waiver. I mean, we do great things with Special Olympics. We have our hand in a lot of different pots, but as you guys know, only bad publicity usually gets attention. So we're trying to counteract that by doing things within the department. Cindy Gillespie's put out Living the Mission, and she does a newsletter type thing every Friday to raise morale. We do the same thing at DDS. We're going to have a craft fair in September where we have all of our clients at the centers. You know, in Boonville, they make rugs. We have a plant nursery here. We do things for Department of Tourism division. You know, at Arkadelphia, we have great programs at all of our centers. So we're talking about joining that up with a food truck Friday and having it in front of the DHS building, and we're going to have a craft fair, and our clients are going to work it and keep the money and go do something fun with it. So we're going to start doing more things that put a better impression in the minds of Arkansans, because we, as you, are tired of bad media, and we want some of our good things to be emphasized in the public. So we're making an active effort to do that.
Thank you very much. Members, if there's nothing else, I want to move on to the next section. Thank you both
Thank you.
for your comments. I also want to acknowledge the fact that I'm seeing out here, there's several people standing out here in the hallway. We apologize. I don't know if there's any empty seats, but please look if you can find a seat. You're not interrupting us to come and join in some way. Be glad for you to do so. With that, I want to move right into the Stephen Group's update on cost comparison of similar institutions in other states. This was a request that put forward at one of our last health